Hi everyone, and let me get you straight to the point. The sole purpose of this video, and I say it outright, is not to rant or expose Jreg as some sort of a biased actor, but rather to criticize the lazy and stereotypical depictions of the political extremes in his videos. But before that, I'd like to specify that I don't hate Jreg at all, and I think he's a meta-ironically based YouTuber in his actual political beliefs that he does a very good job at hiding, as he musters in people from all over the political discourse into his weird but entertainingly ironical depiction of current political and cultural narratives that are consistently pretty neutral, and that is worthy of respect. In spite of that, I sincerely believe that although he does a very good job at entertaining his audience, he popularizes an incorrect depiction of current political forces fighting each other over the internet and offline, who I believe are also the prime audience of his channel. Particularly, his satirical depictions of the supposed political compass are oversimplified. And not only they are not true according to the political compass itself, which by itself is the most biased and inaccurate way of measuring one's political beliefs, and if you disagree with that, you should watch my short little video about it, the link will be in the description, but they are also failing to properly describe the complexity of current political ideological camps. So, without further ado, let's start with the list of those caricatures he uses that supposedly represent the political orientation of the common yet extreme people. Notice that none of those caricatures, or should I say archetypes, have any complexity in them, and in each video of his, they generally behave in the most predictable and stereotypically defined way. The first character of his series is the centrist, or should I say the main villain, a person that is hated literally by all sides of the political extreme. A centrist is a boring idiot that Jreg's audience just loves to hate. The qualities of that person is support for the stupid status quo, being apolitical or going with the mainstream, rejecting the other based radical approaches. Voiced in the stereotypical Russian accent is the authoritarian left, a based and red-pill anti-capitalist communist who dreams to overthrow the capitalist state and destroy the remainers of fascism in order to build an authoritarian dictatorship under the ideology of communism. Next is the anarchist left, although too is a communist, yet portrayed as a pussy soy boy who likes to punch evil Nazis in the face, worship identitarian minority groups, and destroy private property. He is depicted as a friendlier and a weaker version of the authoritarian left, who only advocates for violence towards the authoritarian right, and also the anarchist left serves sometimes as a harsh critic of the authoritarian left, which I guess is kind of historically accurate. But all that considered, he is probably my less favorite character, due to his degenerate behavior that I guess was designed on purpose.
I'm gonna whine and complain anytime you tell anyone to do anything. By the way, when am I getting those state-mandated pronouns?
Anarchy, please. Let us forget that for now. Simply look at the field we have in front of us. We will till it soon, as one people.
Okay, Tanky, you know I'm just playing. I love you. Wow. The flowers really are beautiful.
Yes. And calm. Just keep looking at the flowers.
Next is the authoritarian right. The authoritarian right is represented as the mix of fascism and white identitarianism, very Eurocentric, whose main purpose on set is to be racist and edgy, as well as being unorganized in his political beliefs. Just like the authoritarian left, both of them are depicted to be into big government and being based and, should I say, red-pilled. Finally, the last over-dumbed down caricature is the libertarian or the anarchist right, a person who has literally no morals and willing to buy and sell everything that can be bought and sold. Because he is ultimately concerned only for himself, He, just like the anarchist left, is anti-government.
Do you know how lucrative the LGBTQ plus demographic is? That's the reason. And besides, I'm not just superfluously pink, I'm also superfluously gay. Look at how my hands just flap around. I exist because every letter we add to the LGBTQQIP2SAA acronym is another letter that I get to market to. Another lucrative identity class to exploit.
As you can clearly see, all those characters are depicted in a very exaggerating, stretched out way that I believe does not represent the current realities of the contemporary political arena. I like Jreg's sense of humor, and I get that Jreg appeals to teenaged radicals who are just getting into politics and hating the stupid centrists, but at the end of the day, those are not even the depictions of the radical teenagers themselves. It more reminds me of a stereotypical depiction of a certain group of people that many would consider to be racist if it was done to a group of people or a race, and not to people with different political views. Here's what I mean. You've got a fat white American boomer who works at a convenience store. Then you've got a Chinese martial arts elderly owner of that store, and then you've got a black teenager rushing into the store and stealing a watermelon. The fat American boomer, seeing all of that happening in front of his eyes, decided to get a hold of his AR-15, but then remembered that he was a Democrat, so he naturally didn't do shit, and in response to that, the Chinese boss fired him for being incompetent. Luckily, there was a cop around, and you can finish this on your own. But let's assume stereotypes are actually true. That's fine. How are they made? Jreg has based his 5 characters using the political compass, which already is a problem, but I will not go into details. For that you can watch my other video. But by doing so, he created a false premise, because first of all, if we really account the political compass, then you would notice that the character of the anarchist right doesn't really exist in reality. But I'm not going to. Instead, I would question the assumption that it is worth dividing the political groups into 5. Think about it. Who are the main political actors in the US, let's say? Even on the internet, it is mostly the so-called liberals, socialists, and the conservatives. All that considered, except socialists, you cannot really stretch a liberal or a conservative to the point when they will be on one of those ends of the political quadrant or the political extreme. The 4 political extremes that he portrays in his videos are probably less than 15% of today's internet teenager population, and to be frank, some of them just do not make sense at all. How can an anarchist lefty be really anti-government, yet for wealth redistribution and control of capital and abolition of private property? Is it just me who isn't getting something, or you also are confused? How about the perspectives of people who are not represented at all, such as the environmentalists, the globalists, the conservatives, and why the hell would all white nationalists be necessarily fascist, and why only they are concerned with race? All other identitarians do not exist and do not make their race political? Also, let's not forget about the role of religion and other groups that, although are not political in their nature, still have a big impact on politics. But Ubersoy, relax, it's just a satire. Jreg never mentioned he accurately represents the political demographics. Well, he might not have mentioned it, and it might be ironic and shit. His viewers naturally think it does represent, so they uncritically adopt that worldview of looking at politics. They are assimilating into the idea of the 4 political extremes of the white identitarian fascist, a capitalist with no morals, a literal Soviet communist, and a degenerate lefty revolutionary. Those caricatures don't really exist in objective reality. The political discourse just does not divide into those 4 idiots at its extreme. And what the hell is an extreme political belief anyway? A political belief that is violent? Well, if so, please remove that libertarian from your satire video series. To be completely sure, I have looked at the definition of extremism, and here's what Merriam-Webster had to say about it. The quality of state of being extreme, and an advocate of extreme measures of views, Basically, they use the same word to explain the same word, which doesn't really make any sense, but I think the common definition of the word extreme is just doing actions that are perceived to be dangerous by the wider society. Ultimately, every non-accepted belief or action can be considered and defined as being extreme if most people of that society have a different opinion in regards to it. Which already tells a lot. For example, 40 years ago, a communist could be considered an extremist in half of the world, while the other half would consider them to be the default political position. Any of those four political extremes can be considered the norm in a certain amount of years from now, depends on how our society will evolve, and the definitions of extremes would change again. Meaning that Jreg's depiction of political extremes is not only vague and misrepresenting of the actual political forces, but also very temporary, and shall I say, very Eurocentric. Categorizing people into groups is very hard, since some views like pollution may not be considered political at all. I know that the environmentalists would disagree with me here, but with regards to pollution and not climate change, I think there isn't a debate but a consensus. Some views on the other hand, like natural rights, have once been political, yet are now an agreed upon concept amongst everyone. Ideologies are not static but are subject to change and further interpretations, and I'm not even mentioning one's personal beliefs that are now getting politicized. Categorizing people's political beliefs into one camp is pretty hard, since no person could really be aligned with a certain political ideology fully, unless that person has indoctrinated themselves into it, and should continue to indoctrinate themselves every single time a non-political matter becomes political. And besides, we are more syncretic than we think we are. But even keeping that in mind, I have made an alternative way to categorize people because I really had nothing else to do. Maybe that will help some people grasp the real complexity of politics. Simplified. Here's a list of political ideologies in the respected groups. Also, I didn't mix left-wing economics with left-wing culture and right-wing culture with right-wing economics on purpose, but even the thing that I made is not accurate enough, not only due to certain ideologies being missing, but also it has to do with the fact that I have assumed that the supposed left-right divide actually exists in reality and it is precise enough to be defined, when in reality it is much more complicated than that, and oftentimes I think it has to do more with tribalism than actual political beliefs. And finally, don't view this video as some sort of an attack on Jreg, but as a first step into your long and maturing journey of understanding contemporary and theoretical political practices and ideologies. I like Jreg, he is a funny and talented guy, but I don't like the fact that his viewers internalize his lazy over sarcastically interpretations of the political extremes. Jokes are jokes, but if someone really believes that they are quote-unquote true in depicting contemporary politics or even theory, please send them this link. That was all for today. Thank you for watching.
Hello, it is I, the Nazbol, culturally far right, economically far left. And who are you? Oh, hello Nazbol. I'm pink capitalism, culturally far left, but economically far right. Wow, that is by far the worst shit I have ever seen.